Hello and welcome to part 3 of our video series showing you how to use our new range of weathering powders from Humbrol. In this video I'm going to be applying some heavy mud techniques to this Airfix King Tiger, which has already been painted in a worn winter camouflage scheme. The initial weathering techniques we're going to use on the King Tiger are a repeat of the techniques used in parts 1 and 2 of this video series. By creating a wash of Humbrol Decalfix and weathering powders, I'm able to apply a mixture, let it dry and then reactivate it with a damp brush. Applying vertical streaks of this mixture to the sides of the vehicle, I can then go back with the damp brush and feather the effect into the base coat. This gives me the effect of dirt and grime which is built up on the sides of the tank and then been washed down by rainwater. Down near the tracks there's more likely to be a heavy build-up of mud and dirt, simply because this is the part of the tank that's in constant contact with the ground. All I'm going to do to replicate this is apply a heavier mixture of Decalfix and weathering powders, but just make sure that there are no tide marks by going back in there and reworking them until they blend in naturally. The upper surfaces of the model get the same treatment, as these areas would hold dirt as well. To add a bit of depth and tone, I'm going to put a second darker mixture over the top of the first one. I'll just repeat the same process over again, only this time I'll be a bit more selective about where I apply the weathering powders. On the end of the track guards, where the weathering would be at its heaviest, I'm going to pile this darker mixture on there. This is to emphasise the weathering that's going to go on the tracks later. And once it's all dry, some Mattcote and some Humbrol enamel thinners is mixed together and then used to seal those weathering layers onto the model. This step is done carefully, as the weathering powder mixture may reactivate and you could wipe away all your work. The same Mattcote and enamel thinners mixture is going to form the base for my next weathering step. By mixing some of the weathering powders in with the Mattcote, the wash that's created is quite thick and quite resilient when it dries. If I take a brush which is dampened with Humbrol enamel thinners, however, I can reactivate that wash, but it is far more difficult to manipulate than using a Decalfix wash. That makes this technique perfect for this situation, as what I'm hoping to achieve is a gradient rather than a streaky finish. I can add streaks over the top later. The finishing touch for this effect is to add some very fine runs using a fine brush. These details really stand out. Now it's time for some really heavy mud techniques, and here at Humbrol we've got a method to show you which couldn't be any simpler. Dilute some Mattcote down with Humbrol enamel thinners and apply it to the area where you want to add the mud. Using the same brush, simply pick up the weathering powders and pile them on. The Mattcote will soak into the weathering powders and hold it on the model. By using multiple colours at the same time, you can blend the different shades in position. Here I'm using two different colours. The darker one is smoke, and I'm using that because I want the mud to be really dark and fresh. And once the Mattcote dries, that weathering powder is not going anywhere. A really easy way to enhance this finish is to take a piece of old styrene or card and then, using a thin mixture of Mattcote and weathering powders, do some splattering effects to replicate dirt and mud that's splashed up from when the tank's been moving. Here I'm just drawing the brush over the edge of the styrene and letting the little droplets fly onto the surface of the model. For those of you who like to model your vehicles really muddy, there's nothing stopping you from going ahead and adding a second layer of the mud. Over the top of the first one, this is really going to build up into a thick gloopy mixture. Keep blending those colours together, and before you know it you'll have a deep 3D effect which looks like this vehicle's really been put through its paces. When it's all dry, it's held in place securely by the Mattcote. I'm going to use the same basic techniques on the running gear of the King Tiger. Here I'm just adding some splattering to one of the inner road wheels. I've already painted the outer rim silver, and then with that base of weathering powder splattered on, I'm going to go back in with a fine brush and add some little runs. It's a simple touch, but it adds a degree of animation and visual interest to the finish. For lighter applications of the mud mixture, you could use Humbrol Decalfix, but just remember that it's not going to be as resilient as Mattcote, as a damp brush can reactivate the mixture. Here's the finished running gear in place, and as you can see, I've varied the finish greatly between each wheel to add a bit of visual interest. An alternative to building up the mud in layers is to go ahead and hit it with one heavy coat. Here I've taken some Mattcote and poured it straight into a little tub, and then added Humbrol weathering powders to build up into a sticky paste. I think we both know where this is going. Take the paste and add it to the model. It's as simple as that. Just remember that you can always add more of the mud mixture, but once the Mattcote dries, it's going to be very difficult to get it off, so use sparingly. Once again, I'm going to liven the whole area up and add some visual interest by giving it a run over with the splattering technique, using a thinned down version of the same mixture. The same paste is applied liberally to all the visible areas of the tracks, and while it's still wet, I'm going to pile some more weathering powders straight on the top, followed by a little bit more paste. This makes the effect even heavier, and if you look here, you can see how adding the raw weathering powder onto the wet paste gives it a rough, dried look which varies the texture quite nicely. As a nice finishing touch, why not take some Humbrol Glosscote, which is an enamel based gloss varnish, and add that over the top of the mud mixture. This will dry to a wet look and allows you to choose which areas of your mud effects you want to look wet and which areas you want to stay dry. A little touch of Glosscote can really bring the weathering to life on smaller parts, such as the road wheels. By applying Glosscote in this fashion to the mud effects that you've applied to the model, you can make it look wet, but really it's dry and it's securely held in place and safe to handle. Then it's just a case of picking out the finer details on the tracks with some Humbrol Acrylic silver, where the metal will show through as the tracks are in use. And here's the finished result. That nice clean winter whitewash is gone, and now instead this King Tiger looks like it's seen some active service. When you combine those simple techniques together, the end result is an interesting and varied finish that helps bring your models to life. Why not try experimenting with the different effects that weathering powders mixed with Mattcote and Glosscote can do for your models? We've got even more videos coming up soon showing you a variety of different Humbrol products, so be sure to check back to the channel regularly. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.